Shalom, family, shalom. Yahweh Ba'ashim Barakatah, all praise, honor, and glory to the Most High Power. Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahweh Shai Ba'ashim Rakakwadash for this truth, this knowledge, this wisdom, and this understanding. Now, today's lesson, we're going to touch on brief history about our people, the so-called Maori people. We're going to touch on some verses in the Bible to link with the history. All right. Now, a lot of these articles are interesting. All right. So I'm just going to pull them up and show you what I've been reading and what I've come across in regards to our people, how it ties into the scriptures, and being a part of the scattered tribes. All right. So there's a few articles we're going to touch on. Some written by missionaries themselves, so-called missionaries, when they came and observed our people in their way of life. All right, they had written down interesting things that tie into biblical text, as well as tracing our history. All right. Now, first we're going to bring up an article written by a reverend whose name was, let me just get it. His name was Richard Taylor. They called him Reverend Richard Taylor. Let me just try to find that article. Salakia. Bear with me, family. All right. JKC. That's why it's very bruh. Where's this article gone? Library. Taylor. Not letting me find it. Alright, here we are. Salakia. Alright, again, before we begin any lesson, every lesson, alright, we give all praise, honor, and glory to the Most High Power, Yahweh. And we do so in the name of His only begotten Son, Yahweh Shai. All praise, honor, and glory for this wisdom, knowledge, and understanding and this truth. Alright, so this is an article written by Reverend Richard Taylor, as he's speaking about our people while he's observing them. Alright, now we're just going to read it from the top. The Reverend R. Taylor mentions some of the resemblances. The younger brother taking his elder brother's widow as a wife. So these are, the resemblances of the laws that are in the First Testament. Alright. The nearest male relation marrying the widow of the deceased husband who had no brother living, as Obed married Ruth, the elder brother caring for his sister as his right. The touching of food God present in the whirlwind. Wow, hang on a second. In the whirlwind. Or unclean who touch a corpse. So basically he's talking about similar customs in the New Testament, right? That our people lived by originally. Now what does it say in the scriptures? That we fled from where we came from because we couldn't keep the laws, statutes, and commandments in the land that we came from. So we went to another land to keep them. Alright? To try to keep them. I believe that's in the Apocrypha, and we can also go to that. I think it's in 2nd Ezra. Alright, brief history lesson. Now that's why it's important to research and get some understanding about our history. Now, continuing on. All unclean who touch the corpse, the custom of betrothing infants, and the weeping and lamentation over the death of a friend. Watkin writes in his journal, when a New Zealander dies, his wife is taken by his brother. Betrothing infants, what are they talking about there? What is the custom of betrothing infants? I need to touch on that. Betrothing infants. Alright. So it's like royal marriages through bloodlines. Okay, that's interesting. Now, again, Watkin writes in his journal, when a New Zealander dies, his wife is taken by his brother. Many other resemblances could be mentioned. The Reverend Charles' Creed mentions that a priest is particularly interested in so-called Christianity. Right, we all know that that's coming and being exposed as a white supremacist cult, basically, and compares the sacred history with their own traditions. Because when the missionaries came, right, and they went around the world and they came here, right, a lot of people will say, well, if it wasn't for them, you wouldn't have the scriptures. Well, we already knew the word, all right, we already knew it before they even came here. But ultimately, they didn't bring us the word, right? They didn't teach us the scriptures. All they bring is Christianity, right? Their religion. That's what they taught our people. They didn't teach us the scriptures itself, the understanding of it. All right, they taught us their religion, Christianity. So let's just shine some light on that. All right, that's what they bring here. All right, their religion. They didn't bring the word or the truth. And compares the sacred history with their own traditions, remarking on the traditional events which seem analogous to those in the sacred volume. The Reverend W. Wyatt Gill, B.A., who spent some years in the Polynesian islands of the Pacific. Now, Polynesia basically just means a group of islands or a collective of islands of the Pacific. In his book, Life in the Southern Isles, has pointed out that the elder missionaries who worked in those islands were impressed with the similarity to the Hebrew in the conjugation of the verbs and in many of the primitive words such as mate, death, mara, bitter, rapa'au, to heal, pai, side, ina, behold, etc. Most verbs have a causative active and causative passive form, resembling the Hebrew conjugation hefal and its passive hofal. Another remarkable resemblance, these islanders, he says, like the Hebrews of old, placed the seat of their affections and intellect in the bowels. A parent giving vent to an excess of tenderness to a child will say, my bowels are all gone out toward you. In writing to an absent son, the father will use the expressive phrase, my bowels are pained through grieving for you. So too of the intellect. A native will praise after this fashion, your bowels are full of light. Viz. You have a clear intellect, or the reverse, your bowels are dark indeed. Similar expressions are found in the Bible. Right now he's referring to biblical texts. Genesis 43 verse 30. And Joseph made haste, for his bowels did yearn upon his brother, and he entered into his chamber and wept there. 1 Kings chapter 3 verse 26. Then spake the woman whose living child was unto the king, for her bowels yearned upon her son, etc. So also the New Testament, Colossians chapter 3 verse 12. Put on therefore as the elect of God, holy and beloved, bowels of mercies, kindness, humbleness, etc. Philemon chapter 7. For we have great joy and consolation in thy love, because the bowels of the saints are refreshed by thee, brother. Now, he goes on to say, Watkins writes in his journal, when a New Zealander dies. So this is Watkin. So this is a report by Reverend J. Watkin, and he mentions his report to the Missionary Society London states that the traditions as well as the language show have had an origin with the Polynesians. The Reverend Richard Taylor. All right. Following through. As it's written in this article, right? The resemblance, however, do not imply that there is any ground for the theory put forth by some fanciful minds, that the Maori people are remnants of one of the supposed lost tribes of Israel. It does not suggest, moreover, that the Maoris descend from the Hebrews. But check this out. But it does seem, or I'm going to highlight this, it does seem to indicate that the Hebrews and the Polynesians of the South but it does seem to indicate that the Hebrews and the Polynesians of the South Seas had a common origin. Alright, so what are they talking about? These resemblances, however, do not imply that there is any ground for the theory put forth by some fanciful minds that the Maori people are remnants of one of the supposed lost tribes of Israel. But there's more and more evidence arising to the surface, alright, that does prove we do come from one of the lost tribes of Israel, and we're going to touch on that. And I just wanted to put forth this article first, so that it's presented, and then it's up to you to, to take this knowledge and apply it, and do your due diligence to look into similar things. Very important. I'm going to read that again. So after they just finished saying, pretty much writing about, the observation of how we lived, spoke, which all in all has very similar resemblances to biblical text, customs, alright? After they just finished writing all that, then they go on to say these resemblances, however, do not imply that there is any ground for the theory put forth by some fanciful minds that the Maori people are remnants of one of the supposed lost tribes of Israel. So, they basically contradict themselves by saying that it does not suggest, moreover, that the Maoris descend from the Hebrews. And then it follows true, but it does seem to indicate that the Hebrews and it's from here, I'm going to highlight it again. But it does seem to indicate that the Hebrews in the South, in the Polynesians of the South Seas, had a common origin, meaning that we had a common dialect, we had a common originality, right? That we're commonly original being together, all right? We had a lot of original common ground that we shared with each other. So, this all ties into our history. And again, you can take this information and follow through and read further more into it to gain some understanding. All right, so this was just an article written by a reverend missionary, so-called missionary, and his observation on our people and how it ties into laws in the First Testament. All right, and it's also mentioned briefly in the New Testament. So now, right, we're gonna read up on some history we're gonna touch on Easter Island, which is a part of the, today what they call Chile, Argentina. All right, today we're going to look at the timelines in the similarities of the indigenous people there to the indigenous people here in our country, or our people, right? So, a bit of brief history about Easter Island, or what is called by the natives Rapa Nui. All right, we have similar dialect. We have common origin, and common affliction and way of oppression, similar to what most of us people from the Israelites, what we go through, right, what we've had to endure and still are enduring today. So let's go and read some history. Minority Rights Group. Now, this is an article by Brown and Hudson. Where to why? Rapa Nui. Alright, now let's read it. Rapa Nui, more commonly known as Easter Island, is on the most, I think that's a typo, remote, is on the of the most, I think that's meant to be, is one of the most remote inhabited islands in the world. Oral tradition claims that, I'm going to highlight that, right? Oral tradition claims that the island was originally settled around 1200 after death. Now look at the timeline. Alright? Now hold that timeline. 1200 AD, when a Polynesian colony took to the seas to flee from a neighboring chief. By the 15th century, the island had been divided into two communities who were warring for control of the island. By the time the first Dutch settlers arrived in 1724, the Dutch reported seeing the fields of mysterious Maori statues, but it wasn't until James Cook made land on the island 4 years later that the Western world learned that the statues represented former high chiefs and each had their own names and ranks. Unfortunately for the Rapa Nui people, tribal fighting was continued until 1860. Now, I believe they were also colonized by the... I have to touch on that one. The Dutch, maybe the Spanish, Portuguese, one of the branches from the so-called beast system, or the beast system, the modern-day Roman Empire. Tribal fighting was continued until 1860. The island ecosystem was also in tatters, overrun by Polynesian rats, as they would call it, and suffering from severe soil erosion. Struggling to survive already between 1862 and 1888, 95. Struggling to survive already between 1862 and 1888, 95% of the native population perished. Alright, so we were native to these lands before we came here, right? Because many scholars write that we didn't come here until between the 1200 and 1350 AD. Alright, now it says in this article, oral tradition claims that the island was originally settled around 1200 AD, when a Polynesian colony took to the seas to flee from a neighboring chief. Now, Easter Island is 3,000 kilometers from the South Americas, right? And it's classed as a territory of the Chilean government. So we had a connection with the South Americas with Chile and Argentina. We had a close connection there, right? Well, we had to flee to that island to get away from whoever was trying to hunt us down or trying to kill us off, I suppose. But ultimately, the point is, we have held still to this day similar dialects to the people over there that speak. Rapa Nui is basically te reo, right? Now, where, the language that our people speak, te reo, and Rapa Nui have also similar dialect to the Hebrew tongue. And, we just finished going over an article written by a missionary who observed that, right? So there's a lot of evidence that is coming to the surface where we can touch on and look into. So, this pretty much resembles a lot of the evidence that's coming to surface about the tribe of Naphtali. Right now, history, archaeology, geographical information, right, tells us that when the 12 tribes were scattered, that the tribe of Naphtali went to the west and the south from where they were, right? And geographically on the map, when you look at Israel, all right, and this is also going back to Genesis, when Moses had said to the tribes, gave them their their blessing, and he said to the tribe of Naphtali to possess the land of the west and the south. So if you look on the map geographically, where Israel is and was, okay, the west and the south go toward from that location down to the South Americas or Argentina and Chile. That's basically southwest from Israel, right? The land of Israel geographically on the map, historically, all right, goes to the South Americas. Okay, so this furthermore gives evidence about how our people, the so-called Maori people, tie in and have a lot of common origin and similarities to that ties into prophecy, basically. Right? And this is also another interesting part that we're going to touch on soon, all right, and which is prophecy as well. Now look here. Struggling to survive already between 1862 and 1888, 95% of the native population perished or left the island. Some were abducted by black birders to work in Peru, and some immigrated under their own accord. Black birders. So that was a period of slavery that these damn devils had put our people through. Alright, so the connection there is the language, the timeline, right, and biblical text. Those are the connections that we're looking at. The language, the timeline, and how it ties into biblical text. Alright, which relates to our people, which ties into the scattered tribes of Israel, the Israelites. Some were abducted by blackbirders to work in Peru, and some immigrated under their own accord, with just 111 survivors living on the island at the end of this period. Their culture and traditions were decimated. Alright, but we still had on to our language and the tongue. So, there's still a connection there. Among those lost were the island's chief, his heir, and everyone literate in the Rongorongo script, the only Polynesian script to have been found to date. Alright. So, again, we're going to touch on some more brief history. "20,000 people identified themselves as Rapa Nui. Kilometers from mainland Chile, food supplies, who live on Easter Island, a few hundred live on mainland Chile and in Tahiti as of 2013. Only 2,553 people self-identified as Rapa Nui, comprising about 0.3% of Chile's total indigenous population. So we were indigenous to their land, Rapa Nui, which was prophesied in the Bible, that we would possess the West and the South, which we did. Prophecy fulfilled. And then we had to come here. So this, furthermore, just brings to the point that how we are descendants from the tribes of Israel. All right, we went through slavery as well. What they call blackbirding. All right. The timelines. 1200 AD, with the island being settled. And it is said that we had came here around between 1200 AD and 1350 AD. So there's a strong resemblance right there. And they're still fighting like we all are all over the world. Alright? Because we're coming back to who we are again. We're coming back to our identity. Alright? Back and returning and we're seeking the Lord and His ways, keeping the law, statutes, and commandments as it was, as it's written. Now we're going to go into some scriptures. We are going to go into some scriptures. Alright. I want to go to Genesis 49. Sorry. Genesis 49 and 1. Genesis 49 verse 21. Now this is basically touching on and shining light on the tribe of Naphtali, right? And how the evidence ties in with history and biblical text. Okay, I am yet to find out more about, whether we can prove or have solid evidence about other tribes through prophecy and history. I'm yet to find that out, but for now, right? Because we have evidence, and prophecy ties into our people relating closely with to what's prophesied about Naphtali and the history that ties into that. All right, so Genesis 49:21. All right, this is Jacob blessing his sons. Naphtali was one of the sons of Jacob, one of the 12 tribes of Israel, and it reads, Naphtali is a hind let loose. So when you look at the word hind let loose, that basically means that we were swift runners, right? Because a hind is basically like an antelope, and they're swift when they're let loose, right? When they on the go, they're swift, quick, right? Which resembles a lot of characteristics about how our people are moved, right? They were like swift. We were swift runners, basically. And that's why the English had a lot of hard time trying to kill us off, because they couldn't. We were far more. We were fit, strong. We were fit, strong, fitter than them, stronger than them, and we knew the lands better than them. Right? We were just too swift. We're just too quick. They couldn't get us. They couldn't get all of us. So there's one of the blessings that we obtain. We're swift runners. He giveth goodly words. Right, goodly words. Now, what is the word? What is the good word? The gospel. Right, so we knew the laws, the First Testament. That's why we were priests and chiefs. He giveth goodly words, so we knew how to prophesy. All right, these are the blessings that we have, which resembles a lot about our people. All right, now we're gonna go to where Moses told Naphtali to possess the west and the south. Now, this is Moses speaking to the tribe of Naphtali. Deuteronomy 33:23. And of Naphtali he said, O Naphtali, satisfied with favor, and full with the blessing of the Lord, possess thou the west and the south. All right. Bless the children of Israel. Deuteronomy 33:1. And this is the blessing wherewith Moses, the man of God, blessed the children of Israel before his death. And he said, the Lord came from Sinai, and rose up from Seir unto them. He shined forth from Mount Paran, and he came with 10,000s of saints. From his right hand went a fiery law for them. All right. Now we know that geographically Israel is it covered a lot more ground mass than what it shows on the modern day geographical area. All right, because Israel was much larger in that time than they show it to be now. He said, right, Deuteronomy 33:23, and of Naphtali he said, O Naphtali, satisfied with favor and full with blessing of the Lord, possessed through the west and the south. And when you look geographically at the map, the west and the south, from that position, points to the South Americas, Argentina and Chile. All right, they call Argentina, circle Argentina today, and circle Chile today. Now, who are the indigenous people of that land? The Rapa Nui people, right? Which share a lot of common origin to our people, the so-called Maori people. Right? We also got to understand that the word Maori was labeled upon us by the so-called Caucasian European man when they came in. if you understand the meaning of Maori and what it means, it just means ordinary, right? So this is sort of like what they've casted upon the people, right? To keep them at a stagnant level, right? To just be labeled as an ordinary person, ordinary people, when in fact we are the chosen people of the Most High. All right, so you can't keep labeling yourself as just an ordinary person when you come from something that's much more, much more than that, than what they label us as. All right, and they're good at that. The so-called Caucasian European man, right? They're good at labeling, putting people under these so-called labels or titles to keep them at a stagnant level, so they don't. That's just how they operate. The devil, right? The devil's a deceiver, or the devil's he's a lot of things. He's a liar, all right. A wolf in sheep's clothing. So now that we've touched on a bit of brief history, we're gonna go to Isaiah 24 and 15. I will go to Isaiah 11 and 11 first. I'll just read those precepts. Isaiah 11 and 11. And it shall come to... Well, hang on. We'll go to Deuteronomy 28. Oh, we'll go to Deuteronomy 30, actually. 30 and 1. And it reads, and it shall come to pass when all these things are come upon thee, the blessing and the curse, which I have set before thee, and thou shalt call them to mind among all the nations whither the Lord thy God hath driven thee. Right, what's the nation that we're under today? So-called New Zealand nation. Verse 2, and shalt return unto the Lord thy God, and shalt obey his voice according to all that I command thee this day, thou and thy children, with all thy heart and with all thy soul. Verse 3, that then the Lord thy God will turn thy captivity, and have compassion upon thee, and will return and gather thee from all the nations whither the Lord thy God hath scattered thee. Alright, so we fall under that being scattered history and prophecy. Alright, tie into that. Pay attention. And we'll go back to Isaiah 11 and 11, and we'll read that as well. Isaiah 11 and 11. And it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall set his hand again the second time to recover the remnant of his people, which shall be left from Assyria, and from Egypt, and from Pathros, and from Cush, and from Elam, and from Shinar, and from Hamath, and from the islands of the sea. And from the islands of the sea. Alright? What the so-called Caucasian European man labeled as Polynesia. Okay? A lot of us are remnants of the tribes. Alright? Or we can point out with history and prophecy that mainly ties into the tribe of Naphtali. Alright, for our people, so who they call the Maori people, but they just categorized all the islands of the sea into one category, Polynesia. We're specifically focusing on the west and the south, Naphtali, the timelines, the periods, the language, alright, and the history, and how that ties in to prophecy. Isaiah 24 and 15. Wherefore glorify ye the Lord in the fires. Wherefore glorify ye the Lord in the fires. Now what did Moses say in Deuteronomy 33? Deuteronomy 33 and verse 2, and he said, the Lord came from Sinai and rose up from Seir unto them. He shined forth from Mount Paran, and he came with 10,000s of saints. From his right hand went a fiery law for them. So he's speaking about the law. Isaiah 24:15, wherefore glorify ye the Lord in the fires. In the laws, we glorify the Lord, even the name of the Lord God of Israel, and the isles of the sea. Alright, are you following me? Now, Second Esdras. Second Esdras. Second Esdras. What chapter? Is it chapter 14? No. Let's try to find it. Bugging out. It's bugging out. Damn, what's happening with my phone, man? Okay. Alright. No results. I know it's in Second Esdras. Second Esdras 13. I was close. Second Esdras 13. Alright, 13. Second Esdras 13 and 40. Those are the 10 tribes which were carried away prisoners out of their own land in the time of Hosea the king, whom Salmanasseh, the king of Assyria, led away captive. And he carried them over the waters, and so came they into another land. But they took this counsel among themselves, that they would leave the multitude of the heathen, and go forth into a further country, where never mankind dwelt. Right, so this is when we were scattered. that they might there keep their statutes which they never kept in their own land. And they entered into Euphrates by the narrow passages of the river. Alright, now I just want to highlight verse 42, that they might keep their statutes which they never kept in their own land. Alright, now we have articles by missionaries observing our people, saying that we have similar customs to the First Testament, to the laws. Alright, so we were keeping the laws that we never kept in our own land. Alright, so we went to a further country to keep them. I want to just touch on that timeline when Salmanasseh king of Assyria. When did he live? Salmanasseh, king of Assyria, 744 to 727 BC. Right. And king was the king of Assyria and king of Babylon. So we were scattered all the way back then. Hence why the Messiah, when he was on the scene, he said he only came for the lost sheep of the house of Israel. He sent his disciples into the lost sheep. He told his disciples, he commanded them to only go into the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Alright? So we were part of the lost sheep, which were scattered. But Shalom, all praise, honor, and glory to the Most High Power. Hallowed be thy name. All praise, honor, and glory to the Most High Power. Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rakakodash, Yahweh Ba'ashem Barakatah. All praise, honor, and glory to the Most High Power, for this truth, knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. Alright. Shalom. On to the next.